Welcome, everyone, to the Olive Grove Podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're doing something a little different for you. Instead of our usual look at current articles, we're actually going way back. We're doing a real deep dive into just one specific but really powerful historical text, Acts chapter 14 from the Bible.
Exactly. Think of it as getting a really close look at a key moment in early history. Acts 14, it gives us this ground level view of Paul and Barnabas' first big missionary trip. It's a fantastic window into how these new ideas, this new faith actually started to spread, the kinds of obstacles they ran into, and, well, how different people reacted.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this a bit. So our source, Acts 14, starts with Paul and Barnabas showing up in Iconium. And it looks like the first thing they did was head straight for the synagogue. Why was that their go-to move?
Well, it's fascinating when you look at their strategy. The synagogues, you see, they were the established hubs for Jewish communities, places people already gathered, for scripture reading, discussion. But starting there, Paul and Barnabas could connect with an audience that already understood the scriptures, already had this idea of one God. It gave them a sort of common ground to start the conversation about Jesus.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, building on what's already there.
Right.
But the source says, while the initial response was pretty good, lots of Jews and Greeks believing it didn't take long for resistance to pop up. It mentions unbelieving Jews specifically stirring up the Gentiles, poisoning their minds against Paul and Barnabas. What kind of tactics are we talking about here? How might they have done that?
That's a really key point. It likely went beyond just, disagreeing with the message. They probably used various methods to try and discredit Paul and Barnabas. Think about spreading rumors, maybe twisting their message or painting them as troublemakers trying to upset the social order. Or maybe even heretics, challenging established religious traditions. They might have also tried to get the local authorities involved, warning them about potential unrest or undermining traditions. We see that kind of thing happen throughout history when new ideas challenge the old ways.
So it wasn't just a disagreement about beliefs. There were real social and political ripples. Despite all that opposition, verse 3 says they actually stayed in Iconium for quite a while, speaking boldly. And the text says God backed them up with signs and wonders. How would those reported miracles have sort of landed with the early believers and maybe the wider community?
Yeah, whether you see them as literal events or maybe powerful symbolic stories, these accounts of miracles would have been huge social proof for the early followers. I mean, in a world where people often believe the divine intervened directly, stuff like that would seem like really a compelling evidence, proof that God was on their side, that the message was true. It would definitely strengthen the faith of those already believing and probably catch the attention of others too, make them curious, maybe think more seriously about these new teachings.
It's interesting, though, because even with these accounts of divine confirmation, verse 4 points out the city split right down the middle. Some sided with the opposition, others with Paul and Barnabas. Why didn't apparent miracles just convince everyone?
Well, human interpretation, right. And people's existing beliefs really shape how they see things. Even something extraordinary can be explained away or maybe attributed to, the wrong source, depending on your perspective. Plus, you have to remember, new belief systems often shake things up. They challenge social norms, power structures. So you'll always get resistance from people who benefit from how things are or, just fear upsetting tradition. Division often just comes with the territory when big new ideas arrive.
Yeah, you can see that. And the tension in Iconium really ramps up. The source then talks about a plot involving both Gentiles and Jews, even their leaders, to actually physically attack Paul and Barnabas, to stone them. That's pretty extreme. What does that tell us about how dangerous they seemed?
Oh, absolutely. Resorting to violence like that, especially stoning, which was basically a public execution, it shows the opposition saw Paul and Barnabas as a serious threat. Not just people with different ideas, but dangerous. A threat to the community's whole social and religious setup. Their message must have really hit some nerves, challenged core beliefs, maybe undermined the authority of the leaders. That's likely why the reaction was so violent.
Thankfully, as verses 6 and 7 say, they found out about the plot and managed to escape to Lystra and Derbe. But what strikes me is, after facing that kind of hostility, their immediate reaction is just keep preaching the message in these new towns.
Yep.
What fuels that kind of resilience?
It has to be their absolute conviction, doesn't it? They truly believed in the importance of their message. They felt they had something vital to share. And even though the opposition was dangerous, deadly even, it didn't change the urgency they felt.
Yeah.
And their escape also shows some strategy, right? Instead of a direct confrontation they knew they'd lose, they moved on to continue the work elsewhere. It shows a practical side to their commitment.
And it's in Lystra that we get one of the most memorable scenes in the whole chapter, the healing of the man who had been crippled since birth. The crowd's reaction is, well, it's wild. They think Paul and Barnabas are actual gods. Zeus and Hermes.
Yeah.
Why those two specifically?
Yeah, that's quite a leap. Well, Lycaonia, the region Lystra was in, had its own local myths, deeply connected with the Greek gods. Zeus and Hermes were big figures there. Zeus, the king of the gods, and Hermes, his messenger, often linked with divine visits, and importantly, eloquence. Since Paul was the main speaker, they probably associated him with Hermes, the eloquent messenger. They basically tried to fit this incredible event, the healing, into the religious box they already understood.
It's a fascinating glimpse into how culture shapes interpretation, isn't it? They see something amazing and immediately process it through their own religious framework. Our source material even draws a line from that to, like, modern celebrity worship. Can you elaborate on that connection a bit?
It is interesting that human tendency to elevate people we see as extraordinary, whether it's talent or maybe perceived miracles like in Lystra. Just like the Lystrans thought Paul and Barnabas were divine, we sometimes do a similar thing, maybe in a secular way, with celebrities or powerful figures today. We put them on pedestals, assign them almost superhuman qualities, get deeply invested, and maybe overlook that they're just human.
Right. So how did Paul and Barnabas react to being called gods? They clearly didn't embrace it.
No, definitely not. Their reaction is powerful, tearing their clothes, rushing out, yelling they're just humans. It really hammers home the core of their message. Worship the one true, living God, not humans or idols. Their immediate, very strong correction shows how central that belief was for them.
Verse 16 gives a little theological insight there. Paul mentions God previously letting nations go their own way, but still giving evidence of himself. It sounds like he's trying to find some common ground, even with this polytheistic crowd. What's the point he's making?
It's a smart rhetorical approach. He's acknowledging their past without saying it was right. He's basically saying, look, even when you didn't know the specifics I'm bringing now, God's presence and power were still obvious. How? Through nature, the rain, the crops, the seasons, things everyone experienced. It's an attempt to connect their understanding of the world to a fuller picture of God. But, the fact they still struggled to stop the sacrifices shows just how strong that initial misunderstanding was.
But the story takes another sharp, violent turn. Those same opponents from Antioch and Iconium show up again. They follow them all the way to Lystra and somehow manage to completely flip the crowd's opinion. And the result? Paul gets stoned and left for dead. It's just shocking how quickly that mood changed.
It really is. It's a stark reminder of how volatile crowds can be, how easily swayed by persuasive arguments, especially ones that tap into existing fears or prejudices. These guys arriving from other cities, already known opponents, they acted as a catalyst. They turned that initial awe and admiration into sudden, brutal violence.
And then what happens next is almost hard to believe. Verse 20 says the disciples gathered around Paul's body, and he just gets up and goes back into the city. That's an incredible recovery.
It's extraordinary.
And then the very next day, he and Barnabas head off to Derbe to keep preaching. What does that level of resilience even tell us?
It speaks volumes about their personal strength, doesn't it? And their absolute unwavering commitment to the mission. I mean, to go back into the city where you were just stoned and nearly killed, that takes unbelievable courage. And then to just pick up and continue the journey, preaching in Derbe the next day, it just highlights the depth of their conviction. They were determined to spread the message no matter the danger.
And they don't just stop there. They actually circle back. They return to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, the very places they faced persecution. But this time, the focus is on strengthening the new believers, warning them that, following this path involves hardship. It sounds like they weren't just starting something, they were building a support system.
Exactly right. Establishing those young communities, giving them a solid foundation, was critical if they were going to last. It wasn't just about sharing beliefs, it was about encouragement, teaching them how to handle adversity, creating that shared identity and purpose among the new converts, building a real community.
And then finally, they appoint elders in each church, commit them to God through prayer and fasting, and then head back towards their starting point in Antioch. There, they report everything that happened, emphasizing how God had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. This really wraps up that first major journey. What's the significance of setting up local leadership like that?
Appointing elders was absolutely vital. It ensured these communities could continue and grow long term. By putting local people in charge, Paul and Barnabas were empowering these congregations. They could govern themselves, keep spreading the message even when Paul and Barnabas weren't there. This kind of decentralized structure was key to the movement's success down the line.
Wow. This deep dive into Acts 14 really brings out the challenges, doesn't it? Introducing new ideas, the power of belief, and just the sheer range of reactions people can have.
Absolutely. It's a powerful story, a reminder that, progress and spreading new ideas, it's rarely a smooth ride. It often takes real perseverance, resilience, and that deep, deep commitment to what you believe.
Now, as we just take a short pause in our discussion, we wanted to mention something important. We really encourage you to check out and join the My Christian Space community online. It's a great place for connecting with others and exploring faith together. Alongside that, we want to highlight the incredible work of Enduring Freedom Ministries. Their goal is straightforward, but so impactful. They aim to provide a hot meal, groceries, clothing, maybe a haircut, and laundry services for one person in need, just focusing on helping one person at a time. If you feel you can, please think about donating just $4 a month. That small amount can genuinely make a difference in someone's day-to-day life. You can find all the details on the My Christian Space website. So thinking back on this whole journey in Acts 14, this story of faith, persecution, resilience, how do you think these ancient accounts speak to the challenges and maybe opportunities we face today when we share our own ideas and beliefs? What can we actually learn from the commitment of figures like Paul and Barnabas?
It's a great question. It definitely makes you think about the enduring strength of conviction, the complexities when different cultures interact, and just how unpredictable the journey can be when new ideas start to spread and reshape things.
Well, that brings our deep dive into Acts chapter 14 to a close for today. If you found this kind of exploration of ancient texts valuable, we'd love it if you subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast on YouTube. And for early access to future deep dives like this one and other content, make sure you visit the My Christian Space website.
Yeah, there's always so much value in looking closely at these foundational stories. They often shed light on our own times in unexpected ways.
Thanks for exploring with us today.